And through that connection, we made a connection with talking to the Black Panthers. And we found out that there was a white woman who was supporting the Panthers. She had a condominium in some part of Chicago, and if we came at a certain time, we could go and talk to Fred Hampton, who was the head of the Chicago Panthers at that time. And so we did about, we ran or made a videotape of Fred Hampton, and he was absolutely brilliant. And he was only 22 years old. And I realized there were just Nancy and David and Perry and I were there, and so I realized I must have shot it because I didn't see myself on 50 years later, but I saw the three of them. So it was my camera work, which is, as I said, I spent most of my time behind the camera.
At the time, Mary Curtis, did the mainstream actually want to hear about the Black Panthers? Because you were interviewing them and CBS was paying you to do the work at that time, so they actually wanted to hear?
I don't know. We didn't ask. We did what we wanted to do. We basically controlled what we shot. They weren't telling us what to shoot. They trusted us until they saw the final product, and then they all freaked out because they didn't, it was very countercultural, and most of these people in suits that worked on 57th Street in the CBS building might not have ever run into anybody like us. We were really revolutionary, and so.
So did CBS air your interview?
No.
On the Black Panthers?
Didn't. No. The night we had to show the video to CBS, it was in our loft on Prince Street, and three guys from CBS came. They all walked out of the elevator with trench coats on, and they looked like deer in the headlights, I think, because we were just packed, the whole thing, with a whole bunch of hippies, and everyone was smoking dope, and there were all sorts of cameras all over the place, and they walked out. I'll never forget the expression on their face. It was really satisfying on a certain level. So we put them next door, and we had a monitor, and we showed them the show. Now the show was, part of it was live, part of it was taped, and it was live. Buzzy Linhart was a wonderful friend of ours who's a musician, and he was a great singer-songwriter, and then there would be tape, so we interspersed it. But before we actually ran the show, Don West from CBS, who initially had hired us, came into the control booth, and the three of us, David and Perry and I, were in there. And he had a videotape in his hand, and he said, "We want you to show this tape of Fred Hampton." And we didn't want to do that. We felt very responsible. We did not want CBS to tell us what to do about Fred Hampton in one way at all. So Perry looked at Don West and said, "I will pull every plug in this studio if you make us show this." So Don realized we had mutinied, and he threw up his hands and stomped out of the control room, and he ran the show. And so after the show ran, the three guys from the head of programming came out, got on the mic and said, "We will attempt to avoid putting anything like this on CBS for the next 7 years." Actually, in real life, it took 20 years before CBS showed anything like this. What it was reality TV, and they had no idea how to do that at that point. They had never seen it before, because everything I said, as I said before, was scripted. This was not scripted. We just shot what was happening.
But even at that time, interviews were not scripted, right? I mean, television, they did interview people, did they not?
They did. Right, but anything that was a program had a script, or news was all scripted.
So what happened when you mutinied about the Black Panther interview? What did CBS do after that?
They freaked out. On TV Guide the next day, there was this huge article. Who gave these people this money?
So sorry, I guess I misunderstood. So the public did see your video?
No.
Oh, they did not.
No, it was just the three guys that were in the loft next door that was watching the monitor. They're the only people from CBS who saw it, and they refused to put it on television because it was so different than anything they've ever seen, and the subject matter was very different, and the name of the show was Subject to Change. And so
did they pull your money?
Yes. They stopped all the money. They wanted any equipment back that they had lent us, and so we had a divorce there from CBS. But then at that point, we had to figure out how to make a living, because none of us, we'd all given up our day jobs, or any job we had. We were just into this, but there was very little way to show what you'd been doing. There was one institution called the Kitchen, run by the Vasulkas, and they were a couple, and they had a regular screenings, and you could go, and if you made a videotape, and there were a lot of, I want to make this really clear, we were not the only group doing this in Manhattan at the time. There was Rain Dance, and TV, and a number of other individuals making video using these little Sony Portapacks. We were just one of a group of people. We were not totally original. So then what happened was that a lot of things happened. They had sent us to California, and I'd never been to California, so when I looked around, I said, oh, this is where I'm going to escape to. And so, to make a long story short, I left the group. I've had it with group mind. I want to make my own decisions, and I was tired of being in a collective. And so I moved to California. And then the Freaks moved upstate New York to a big, huge farmhouse. And they started a pirate television station, which was totally illegal, of course. But they stayed together until the end of the 70s. And there's still a number of Videofreex alive.
What year did you leave?
I left in 1971.
I was wondering, as when you were part of the Videofreex and you were running around Manhattan and other parts of the country, I guess, you were focusing on the movements and what people were doing. Were you also focusing on the environment, or were people aware of what was happening to the environment, especially in the Vietnam War, the kinds of war chemicals they were using? Were people protesting those kinds of things too?
Yes, there was Earth Day. Earth Day started, I think, in 1970, 71, and that was about the consciousness about taking care of the planet. And then when that was part of what people were really upset about, was Agent Orange, because it was polluting the environment. It was polluting our soldiers. It was polluting the Vietnamese.
So the public knew about it? The American government didn't keep that secret?
No,
that they were using
about Agent Orange. Yeah, and we knew how horrific it was. So it was just really awful. And the whole Vietnam thing was a nightmare. It was a real nightmare. And it was in our consciousness all the time, because it was going on, and we just kept seeing, all this newspaper articles and news coverage about it, and there was no way to escape it, and especially since it was our generation that they were taking off to war, and there were 50,000 guys that got killed in that war.
From the U.S.
Yeah.
And there was no draft for women, right?
No, there was no draft for women.